You are listening to a reproduction of Uncle Sam's Radio Farm School from the United States Department of Agriculture in 1927. Disclaimer: do not assume content reflects current scientific knowledge, policies, or practices. This broadcast was aired on Friday, the 4th of February of 1927. Access to the lesson booklets that were provided through the USDA in 1927 is given in a link below. This particular lecture can be found on page 140 of that document.
The professor, who represents the United States Department of Agriculture, is going to talk about dairy barn ventilation tonight. If you want additional information, just write for government bulletins on the subject, and at the same time request enrollment in the United States Radio Farm School, which entitles you to the 216 printed lessons in booklet form.
Well, Craddock, here we are. I told you I was going to bring the whole class out to see your one-story barn.
I'm glad you all came. Go ahead and look around all you want to. Is there anything I can show you?
I just wanted the class to see how you handle the ventilation. I started to take them out to Henry Brunton's place, so they could get some idea what poor ventilation will do for a dairy barn.
They couldn't tell much about it. Now, he's got it pretty well torn up.
So I understand. He's lost a good deal on account of dampness. It's certainly time he was putting in some sort of ventilating system.
Yes, the dampness caused the feed stored in his barn to mold. It rotted the timbers. It rusted the equipment. And if the truth were known, I guess most of that trouble he's been having with disease among his cows was due to poor ventilation too. You can't get clean, wholesome milk except from healthy cows.
He would certainly have saved money if he had built the barn right in the first place.
There's no question about that. But Professor, you won't find any dampness on the timbers of this barn.
That's the reason I brought the class out. I want all you men to notice how the ventilating system in this barn is designed to carry off the foul air and at the same time let in fresh air without causing a direct draft on any of the cows. The system operates on the principle that warm air, being lighter than cold air, tends to rise, while cold air tends to settle.
It's the King system, named after Professor F.H. King of the University of Wisconsin. He worked it out.
Yes, you will all notice the big outlet flue up there at the ceiling. You see, it starts there and runs right up through the roof.
How much air does a cow need, Professor?
Well, Jones, you see that 10-quart pail at the side of the alley, there? If you had to give a cow her air in that, you'd have to give her about 6 pailfuls a minute to meet her needs. On the average, a cow breathes 116 cubic feet of air an hour, and the air she breathes is as necessary for proper nourishment as is the hay or the grain she eats. Unless she gets her oxygen, she can't make use of her feed. But a cow not only needs air, she needs pure air. Air that has once been breathed has lost much of its value. That's the idea here. That big outlet flue up there acts as a chimney to carry off the warm, foul air and moisture which the cows continue to give off all the time. Now, I want you to notice those small openings into the stable along the side walls, near the ceiling there. Those are the inside openings of the fresh air inlet flues. You see they have dampers on them, so they can be closed when necessary. After a while, we'll go outside and see how they are protected from the weather by a hood. What is it, Jones?
The warm air goes up there by the ceiling. Why don't it go out those openings?
You'll see when we get outside. The outside opening of each of those fresh air inlets is 5 feet below the inside opening you see there. If the outside opening was the same height or higher, the warm air would get out that way. But as I said before, This whole system is based on the fact that warm air rises and cool air falls. Well?
Professor, how did he know what size to make the outlets and inlets?
How about that? Craddock?
That outlet is 2 feet square. That's what they figure is about right for 20 cows.
Yes. The outlet flue should have an area of about 1/5 square foot per cow, with possibly less area in cold climates and more in warm climates. A flue having an area of 1 square foot would be enough for 5 cows. That's right, a flue 2 feet square has an area of 4 square feet. That's enough for your 20 cows. The area of outlet flues is based on the principle that the air will rise in the flue at a certain rate, thus removing from the barn a certain number of cubic feet of air a minute. An equal amount of fresh air is drawn through the inlet flues. If the outlet foul air flue has an area of 4 square feet, the total area of the fresh air intake flues should equal 4 square feet.
That's what mine do. You'll notice I've got 10 inlet flues, 5 on each side, 10 feet apart. Each has an area of 1/10 of 4 square feet. They are 4 inches wide and 15 inches long in 4-inch stud walls.
Right there, I'd like to say, in case you have a barn plastered on the inside, the flues should be protected with suitable insulating material between the flue and the plaster. Otherwise, any moisture which touches the walls at the points where the flues are located will condense.
Professor, don't the wind outside affect the rate at which the warm air goes out?
Yes, the amount of foul air removed by the flues varies considerably. In a properly designed ventilator, the wind will create an outward suction which will help remove the foul air from below. The higher the outlet flue extends above the roof, the greater will be the draft. You'll notice Craddock has dampers at the inside end of the intake flues there. Now look up that straight outlet flue. You notice he has a galvanized iron damper to cut down the draft when it gets too great. Flues containing many bends should be larger.
We have an old-style slatted cupola on our dairy barn. How's that for a ventilator?
Don't it give a downdraft when the wind blows?
Yes, sometimes it does.
Well, tests have shown that sudden changes in the temperature of the barn affect the quantity of the milk yield. Your ventilating system should avoid such sudden changes. All right, boys, we'll take a peek at the outside of the barn and then head on back. Thanks, Craddock, for letting us look over your ventilation. And say, Craddock, I hope you'll be with us next week. We are going to take a trip to inspect a new dairy house. You might get some pointers on building one yourself. So long.
This show was researched and produced by BreakAway Empire LLC.